As Provost, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today. We are honored he is here with us. But as the Senator himself noted in United, his autobiography, honoring someone is not just about venerating them, it is about learning from them. We can all learn a lot from Cory Booker. Raised in New Jersey, he attended Stanford on a football scholarship, and in his spare time, he earned a Rhodes Scholarship and studied at Oxford. Later, he received a law degree from Yale, which I think they call the Pen of New England. Now, to most, his trajectory seemed obvious: a lucrative job in a top-notch law firm. It wasn't obvious to him. What truly resonates are not the impressive lines of Senator Booker's resume, but the spaces between them. These spaces speak volumes. They demonstrate consistent, unwavering belief in the power of the individual, not simply to do good, but to advance the common good. At Stanford, he organized student mentors and volunteers in East Palo Alto, a neighborhood with a troubled history of restrictive property laws and redlining. At Yale, he worked at a free legal clinic for low-income residents of Newark, which is a 2-hour drive on a good day. In 1996, he moved to a rough neighborhood there and for a while lived in a tent. He provided legal help to the residents of the struggling Brick Towers housing project, and eventually he lived there himself. In 1998, he ran for city council and won, defeating a 4-term incumbent. In 2004, a young man, fatally shot in the chest, died in Cory Booker's arms on the streets of Newark. 2 years later, the councilman became mayor. As mayor and now as U.S. Senator, he has been one of our most outspoken advocates for fairness, equal opportunity, higher wages, and improved public education. In his pocket, Cory Booker carries an African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Graduates, as you prepare to leave Penn, I urge you to consider 2 things. Not how fast you want to go, but how far. And not the lines on your resume, but the spaces between them. In 5 years, or 10, or more, what will we learn from you? Please join me in welcoming Senator Cory Booker.
Thank you very much. It is incredible to be here, and I want to thank you all for inviting me to be a part of this day of history in your lives. I want to thank you for allowing me to be a small part of this extraordinary community. I want to congratulate the graduates, and I want to thank everyone who helped to make this possible. When I say everyone, so many people helped to make this day possible. I want to thank the parents and the grandparents and the family members. I want to thank everyone from the incredible president and astounding provost all the way up to those people who clean floors and manicured lawns and serve food to contribute to this community. And so I confess to you something. When I was graduating from college, I felt like I knew a lot, and now that I'm about twice your age, I'm not as confident in what I know. In fact, I am a person that believes I am in struggle, as we all are. And the beautiful thing that I've realized is that we're all in this struggle together. We perceive that there are differences between us, gaps and gulfs, but we are far more united, far more indivisible, far more involved in a larger common struggle than we know. And so what I'd like to do very briefly today is confess to you two things I struggle with, and it's really two stories. One from someone from history that I've come to admire, and the other one is perhaps one of my greatest mentors ever. The person from history, it's a short story. I don't even know if it's apocryphal or not, but it's made a point that I struggle with, and it's a story about Mahatma Gandhi. And Gandhi was said to be rushing a busy days, running from point to point, but now he was running for a train to leap into the third-class section that he's traveled in. People were there to grab him and help him to get onto the train, but one of his sandals fell off, and everybody watched with disappointment that Mahatma Gandhi had lost his sandal. But before people could settle into their thoughts of disappointment or consolation or problem solving to how they were going to deal with this one-sandaled man, Gandhi reached down really quickly, grabbed his other sandal, and threw it out on the tracks. People were curious, Mahatma, why would you throw your other sandal out there? And he looked like it was a confusing and bemusing question. He said, I threw the other sandal because whoever finds that first sandal, wouldn't it be nice if they found the other one as well? I heard that story when I was about your age, and I was astounded by the moral imagination of Gandhi in that story, to literally see people who were not there, but yet still expand his love to touch those folks who we would never even see. It was the most creative compassion, and I wanted to try to live my life in that way. You see, I knew and I experience now the same rush of chasing after dreams, of racing around a day, of moving from there to there, but I realize a simple lesson the older I get, that how we live our days is how we live our lives. And as we're chasing after our destinations, our goals, and our dreams, it actually is those small things we do every single day that define us. In fact, in truth, more than a big speech that you've prepared for, more than a big goal or a big dream, more than the big fight, more than our race, more than our religion, it is our actions every day that define who we are. They define us. And I've begun to learn in my life that perhaps the biggest thing you can do on any day is often just a small act of kindness, of decency, of love, an exhibition of moral imagination or creative compassion. I wonder about this, and we miss our opportunities every single day with just the people around us while we talk big about changing the world or about what's wrong with other people, but we forget that we have so much power to make a difference. Now, look, I say I struggle with this because I don't always get it right. Let me give you an example. Had been elected United States Senator. I still live in the Central Ward of Newark. We're not the wealthiest community there in my neighborhood. The median income is about $14,000 per household, but my community is rich with spirit, rich with energy, rich with compassion. But one day as I was driving home, I felt a little bit like Odysseus, because as I passed this fast food restaurant, I began to hear the siren call. Now look, I'm a vegan, and listen to these people, because how do you tell if someone's a vegan? Don't worry, they'll tell you. And so I'm a vegan, and I knew that in my neighborhood folk know me, but yet I couldn't resist this call to this fast food restaurant. It was a call in a language that I don't speak any of them. It was French, and it was French fries that were calling me. I don't speak any French, but I could swear I heard that song, Voulez-vous coucher avec French fry now? And as I told my driver, an incredible officer named Kevin Batts, retired from the Newark Police Department, joined my staff because of our friendship and our bond. I said to him, Kev, we're almost home, man, but do you mind? We got to swing through the drive-thru. Now, Kevin, he didn't say a word, but he smirked. He was mocking me and my weakness. And we drove around to the drive-thru. I sunk down in the seat. I didn't want anyone to see me. The person said to me, "I take your order," and I used a falsetto voice. I ordered 2 of the most supersized French fries I could. We pulled around to pick up the fries. I was still leaning down low. And then they handed these fries into my window. And I'm telling you, I'm a senator now, so maybe I could change this, because these French fries should be a Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 narcotic. I mean, they must sprinkle a narcotic on these fries, because as soon as they got in, I felt this joy and this anticipation. I cuddled my fries like I was from a Lord of the Rings, my precious. And we began to move, but then I see a guy at the end of the driveway there, young white man in a garbage, rooting around, and I slowed down and I told Kevin, roll down the window. We rolled down the window and I said, "Hey man, anything I can do to help you? Are you okay?" And he turns around and he looks at me and he says, "No, I'm okay, I don't need anything." And I go, "Are you sure?" He goes, "Well, I'm hungry." Now, I don't know what religion you all pray to, if you do at all, but I swear Jesus said something that if I have 2 McDonald's French fries and my neighbor has none. And so I reached in my bag as the aroma hit me. My hands shook as I grabbed that large fries. And I reached to him, and I swear he put his hand on it to take it from me, and I resisted for just a moment. And then he pulled the fries to him. He was happy. I felt some sense of, okay, I did the right thing. And then he was about to leave, but he turned around, and now his face went from appreciation to anguish, almost as if he was in pain. And he says to me, "Hey man, do you have any socks? I need some socks." And it was a strange question, but I knew it must speak to something he was dealing with, some pain, some hurt. And I looked at him. I wished I could have helped him, but I don't carry spare socks in my car. And I said, "I'm sorry, I can't help you." And he began to leave. But then this retired police detective, born in Newark, raised in the projects, threw the car in park, reached down between his legs, kicked off his shoes, pulled off his socks, and handed him through the window. I sat back and I realized, wait a minute, I'm a few blocks from my house. I have so many socks I don't even wear that my mother gave me on some birthday or special occasion. But yet I was not living with that moral imagination, that creative compassion. I've come to learn in my life that we have such power that we do not use as we go about our big challenges, our big goals, our desires to make big differences. We forget the power we have right now. We have a choice in every moment. If we just look around us, and the choice that we often surrender and fail to make is to accept things as they are or take responsibility for changing them. And no, you may not be able to end homelessness. Maybe you're not going to be able to end hunger. But we can never allow our inability to do everything to undermine our determination to do something. As great as every one of us are, as much as I spent my life trying to change the world, we cannot forget that our real power is not necessarily to change the world, but to make a world of change to the people we encounter every day. A smile, creativity in a kind word, finding a way to throw a sandal onto the track. That is the power we have right now, today, and every day. It was Desmond Tutu who said, "Do a little bit of good where you are. It's those little bits of good put together that overwhelm the world." We're not here because of the people we read about in history books. Yes, that's part of the story, but we're here because of little bits of good, of sacrifice, of decency, of mercy, and of love. Let me tell you, though, about two Ralphs. And when I was in college, to Ralph meant something completely different. So let me be more specific. It's Emerson, who said, very simply, to paraphrase him, that only what we have within can we see without. If we see no angels, it's because we harbor none. Now I worry because I still see now the words of Ralph Ellison being so true. He said, I am an invisible man because people refuse to see me. I believe that there are so many people we encounter every day that we just don't see. But what is even worse than that, and I am compelled by that, it is what drives me every day to try to make this nation one more of justice and mercy and decency. But I'm telling you now that I'm in a professional world, I've come to worry about a different type of invisibility that actually can't be best described as invisibility, but maybe it is how we every single day reduce people, strip them from the layers of their humanity down to a label or a presumption. You know, I love the flowing words of Martin Luther King when he talked about repentance. He said, we will have to repent in this day and age, not just for the vitriolic words and violent actions of the bad people, but also the appalling silence and inaction of the good people. Well, I'll tell you, I am compelled to try to motivate and inspire through my own actions good people to get off the sidelines, to realize that this democracy is not a spectator sport. But I also worry about those folks who we assign labels like vitriolic words, and we assign conclusions about their souls that they are bad people. And we do this in ways we don't even realize. I remember as a young guy living in the projects in Newark, I was in New York to try to chase down money for a nonprofit, and as I was scuttling through on an awful day of sleet and snow, and every street seemed to have curbs full of just slush. As I walked to this one curb, I saw what amounted to one of the Great Lakes of slush, and I worried about my shoes. How was I going to get around it? And then I saw an elderly African-American woman amongst all the hustle and bustle of this fancy New York street. She was carrying a cart, one of these metal carts with wheels, trying to make it across a busy street with the light about to change, heading towards the ocean of slush. My mama raised me right. I began to dart over to her, but before I could, some guy cut me off. I was angry about it. He was dressed like a Wall Street guy in a coat that was probably worth more than my car. He had fancy shoes on. And I looked at this white man cutting in front of me, just holding back for a second. It's like he didn't see me, but suddenly he does not what I don't expect. He goes through the Great Lake of slush in his fancy shoes, grabs the woman's cart, lifts it up, pulls it to the sidewalk, goes back through the slush to grab the woman and take her all the way around, putting his hand up to traffic to get the woman on the curb. Before my implicit biases about this man because of the color of his skin or because of what he's wearing could fully settle in, he shocked me to the consciousness. I didn't render him invisible, but I stripped away his humanity because I did not see him. The question we have to ask ourselves of the importance of being good and decent and loving, morally creative, is that do we extend those feelings and those emotions just to people we like, or just to people we deem worthy, or just to people who agree with us, or just to people who think like us? understand, and it hurts me that we're becoming a society that just because someone has different views, we tend to strip them from their humanity. I want to talk about us and our daily lives, but let me use the public stage for one moment. One of my lowest points during the presidential elections was when I was sitting at home watching the Republican debate. And it's one of the strange moments where I knew a lot of folks. I mean, heck, half the America was running for the nomination for the Republican Party at that point. And there was my governor. Now, Chris Christie and I could write a dissertation on my disagreements. We literally fought over policy issues, but yet he and I had forged a friendship. We knew that he was the governor of the state. I was the mayor of the largest city. We had to put aside the 60, 70, 80% of the things we disagreed on because I represented a struggling city in a recession. And when the country has a recession, inner cities face depressions. I had to seek the common ground with him to try to find a way to make some difference for my community. And as I sat there now during a presidential election, I could not believe my eyes when these other nominees were castigating Chris Christie for hugging Barack Obama. Now, let me tell you about this hug. It was after Hurricane Sandy. The president flew into the state of New Jersey. So many people died. Thousands of people lost their homes. And here is the President of the United States coming down the steps to meet the governor, and the two of them at the bottom of the steps, they hugged. And I want to tell you something. I'm a hugger, and it wasn't really a good hug either. It was one of those awkward guy hugs. But what have we become in a society where we are vilifying people so much so that to hug someone of a different party who thinks different is a sin? Where have we come as a nation? But that's the national stage. I want to take it to you. I was just a few weeks ago at a Humane Society banquet dinner. It's a Humane Society, treatment of animals. Did I tell you I'm a vegan? And here we are talking about compassion and kindness and treatment of animals, and someone comes up to me and goes, Senator Booker, I so appreciate what you're doing. Thank you for being in the fight. Hey, let me show you what I tweeted just for now. And they showed me a tweet to Paul Ryan, and it was probably one of the most trolly, vile, angry tweets I'd ever seen. And the incongruency of the moment really struck me. And so this is the challenge. Can we be a nation that can disagree, but still find that common ground? But that's the country. Can you be a person whose love is so great that you love those people you disagree with? You love those people who curse you. You love those people who you see as an obstacle even to justice. Now, I'm not asking folks to do what my heroes did, like Mandela in prison, who found a way to love his captors and eventually forgive them, or Gandhi with the oppressive imperialistic regime that still found a way to love his enemy, or Martin Luther King, who literally got on his knees and prayed for white supremacists. No, I'm just asking you, hey, can you sit down with somebody that's wearing a red Make America Great Again hat and have a conversation? And by the way, one of the best pieces of advice I've ever been given was simply this: talk to the person, but you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You can look for other common ground. But that brings me to the last person and who I want to end on. Because this was my mentor that lived these lessons that I am struggling to embody. This man's name was Frank Hutchins, and he was a legend. By the time I was a law student coming to Newark, the stories of him as a tenant activist and a tenant organizer were legendary. He literally was responsible for the longest rent strike in Newark's history against the worst of slumlords, the federal government and the Newark Housing Authority. And he won. By the time I met him, we were organizing these neighborhoods that had high-rise buildings with some of the most difficult slumlords imaginable, people that were caricatures of slumlords. But I'll never forget this guy when we would sit in negotiations and I would be angry, I would be fit to fight, and yet he still still found a way to look at them with grace and even mercy. He seemed to understand that you don't have to be mean to be tough, that you don't have to be cruel to be strong, that you don't have to curse the person who curses you. I saw Frank now in tenant meetings where we would sit up and have to take people's complaints to try to write it down, to fight these battles. And it was amazing to me how Frank would sit in a tenant meeting that would go on for hours and hours. I would get restless. Is another person going to get up and tell their whole life story? But he never seemed to falter at looking at those people, teaching me that perhaps the most valuable thing you could give someone in your life is your attention. And as he sat there, I talked to him after the meeting and I said, God, that was too long. People went on. And he goes, Cory, it's important that we heal those buildings from the crisis that they're in, but people too need healing. We're all fighting hard battles. Pay attention to people, see them. Well, I would become a councilman and a mayor, and Frank and I would still work together. And yet he got older and older, and then he started getting sick. His disease took his eyesight from him, and I would still take him out to restaurants, and I would still take him shopping. He would demand that I would take him to movies, and I'm like, Frank, you can't see, man. And he would say, no, take me there. I want to listen. By the time Frank's health became failing, they put him in hospice, but I would still go visit, and I confess to you, I was frustrated at times that hospice room wasn't full of people. Here's a guy that thousands and thousands of people relied on. I was frustrated that he was alone. And I'll still never remember the last day I saw him alive. This was my hero. And I walked into his hospital room after the nurse told me that he wouldn't last long, and I could see his breath was faltering. Now, when Frank's eyesight started going, we started a little joke. I would see him before I'd take him out to dinner, and I would say, hey, Frank, it's Cory. And he would push me off and say, I see you, Cory, I see you. Well, it became our thing. Hey, Frank, it's Cory, I see you. But now I walk into his hospital room, his voice is not there, his breath is rapid. And I say, Frank, it's Cory. And I saw him with such effort, he labored. And he said to me, I see you. I walked to the side of his bed, and I held his hand and I talked to him. And as I sat there, I felt this peace, and I still saw his light. And I realized that he was trying to teach me that, Cory, I am here and I have lived a good life. I felt like he was trying to teach me that ultimately life is not about celebrity, it's about significance. Life is not about popularity, it's about purpose. Life is not about how many people show up when you're dead, but how many people you show up for while you are alive. I sat with him as long as I could. I felt such love for this man. I knew this would be our last time. He said no words except for that when I entered, I see you. And then I had to go. I told him I was leaving. I stood up and I leaned over and I kissed him on the forehead. I put my hand on the side of his face and I said with all of my heart, Frank, I love you. And then as I was beginning to pull away, he wanted to say something again. I leaned close to his bed and he repeated my words. He looked at me and with short breaths, he forced out, I love you. I walked out of his room. I closed the door. I started crying. I knew it would soon be over, and it was. He would die there soon after. And so, class of 217, I got to leave you with those 6 words that Frank said. I see you. I love you. I see you. I love you. I see you. I love you. Class of 2017. You're going to go out for the big challenges, the big fights. I see you. I love you. You're going to have tough days. You're going to fall. You're going to fail. But I see you and I love you. May your vision and your love not just change the world, but make a world of change for everyone that you can. God bless you.